This is a skin that I made on my gel plate with my flower masks. This was a quick reel that I had posted on Instagram a few weeks ago, and it showed some of the process, but there were some requests for a longer video. And today I'm recreating the process step by step. Here's a materials list, and you may want to pause or take a screenshot now and gather your supplies. These are called Imagined Flower Masks, and they're from Stencil Girl, and it's one of my designs. To find them, you go to stencilgirlproducts.com and type Rossiter in the search field, and it'll show up. This was one of my first attempts at creating stencils. They come in a sheet that has 8 different flowers, and this is the first project that I made with them. I'm also using a gel press plate, and I put it on a placemat so that I can move it around. I have a double water container here so I can place my used stencils and masks in the water before the paint dries on them. And that's from Silver Brush Essentials line. These are some other stencils, designs I made for Stencil Girl. They're a little larger than the ATC size, but still perfect for trading cards or small areas of interest on the gel plate or in an art journal. I just grabbed some colors that are close to each other on the color wheel, or analogous, and I use golden fluid and high flow paints. So vat orange, cadmium yellow, and some light magenta, that's a high flow color. And I just put a little of each on my palette paper so that I can mix colors. Those colors are all opaque, and I'm also going to use something a little more transparent like this Naphthol red light. You always want to cover the top of the bottle with your finger and shake it up before you use high flow. So next I'll just jump right in and start applying paint with my brayers. So I put just little bits of color here and there as if I'm starting an abstract piece. The magenta and cad yellow makes an orange that I really love, so I mix some of the colors up and just keep building the layers. I don't know if you can see it, but there was some water on the plate and it's resisting the paint a little. I just hit it with a hair dryer before I start the next layers. I like how this looks, but we're on a different mission today, so I keep mixing and adding colors. That's pretty cool. So you can use a larger brayer. I'm using the small one, but because I like to make small random marks with it. It's more painterly. After I'm happy with these colors, I'll dry this layer and then add some patterns using a So Flat paint in a darker red. I'm going to use that with my mini Modern Shapes stencils. And those stencils come in a large sheet with 8 designs, and I just cut them up to make them easier to use and store. So I'm going with the circles, and I just pat some of the So Flat in with a sponge. It only has a tiny bit of color in it. And I'm not looking for perfect circles here, just some shapes and patterns. Doesn't need to be perfect. These are all going to get buried under another layer of paint, so it'll be a very subtle look when it's finished. And I just drop the stencil right into the water bucket. So next, how about some flower shapes? I've loaded my sponge with a little orange, and I'll add some pattern down here. It's very subtle, just one of many layers. Now I'm going to add some black. I'm going to put just random dots in different areas. You can use the other end of a small paintbrush for this, or a dotting tool, or a kebab stick. I'm going to use the dotting tool. So I have a small pile of black on my palette, which is on the right, and I just dip the tool into the paint and then make a few dots. And I'll dot a few areas and use a couple different colors and just randomly, thinking about composition a little bit, add the dots. Now I'm going to use some of the transparent color over the whole plate. You'll still be able to see what's underneath. I just want to make sure that there's a lot going on here because this will be what shows as the flower shapes. I'm going to add a little more magenta in a couple places. And really, I'm just having fun moving the paint around. It's super meditative. And I want this to be dry for the next part, so I hit it with the hair dryer. And then we'll add some greens and a little fluorescent red. I love the So Flat olive color. It reminds me of an opaque green gold, if you're familiar with that color. So we'll add more small patterns using the mini Modern Shapes stencils and some green here. It almost looks like foliage if you focus on the positive green areas. I like that. So there's some areas that are more transparent than others and lots of patterns and marks going on. And just for fun, let's look at it over a white paper. All right. Now we're ready to add some pigment powders. And these are called infusions. They're pigment powders mixed with walnut ink powder. My friend Isabel gave me a couple last year, and I ended up buying several other colors from Joggles, and that's Joggles, Joggles. You only need a tiny bit, so you take the cap off, remove the little foam circle, and then poke a hole in the lid like a pepper shaker. I used a stylus, but you can use an awl or anything sharp and pointy for this. And then you just tap out a tiny amount. So I've added the orange here, and then I repeat the whole process with the raspberry color. Just poke that out, and then you can save that foam circle and put it back into the lid when you're ready to put these away, and that'll keep anything from spilling out of the hole that we made in the lid while it's in storage. So just poke and tap a little onto the plate. They don't look like much now, but when we activate the powders with water, you'll see the colors start to bloom. The walnut ink powder is a dark sepia brown color. So I just replaced the little foam circle, dropped it, and then put the lid on. And that'll hold it in place when I put it away. So grab your water mister and let's activate the powders. You just give it a few squirts of water, and it can take a couple seconds before you see any changes, but you can see them starting to spread now. I'm just going to wipe off the extra water from my spritzer. Went all over the placemat. I've let this dry completely now, and I'm ready to place the imagined flower masks on the plate. It's totally dry, so you can take your time moving the flowers around until you get an arrangement that you like. And I have 8 of these flowers in different sizes and shapes, so use these 3. And then I think that the tiniest one will fit perfectly right up here. Yep, there we go. Next, we'll paint over the masks with a brayer and a light color. I'm going to use titanium white and some Titan green pale from the So Flat line. And I also have some open Titan buff. The open colors are what I usually use with my gel plate. They stay wet or open for a longer period of time. So this can be a bit tricky, so use your finger to keep the masks from moving as you brayer over them. Just slowly go over each one while holding the masks down. And I'll add the paint in stages. It may need a second coat. And yep, I just brayered that small flower right off the plate. It's not a big deal, I can just put it right back. So just go slowly, be patient, and you can even use the other end of a paintbrush to keep the masks from moving as you brayer over them. And be sure to get into each little area so that we don't lose a lot of detail when the masks are removed. What's cool here is you can see that the pigments are now leaching up into the lighter colored paint, so it's getting some tinted areas, the oranges and the brown. So as I'm covering all the exposed areas with this first layer, notice how the paint slowly changes color. It starts out very light, but the moisture from the paint is reactivating those pigment powders. I like this unpredictable effect. I can keep adding layers of white or light layers until I get those effects to slow down. It's kind of a cool marbled effect now. And that gives me a ton of inspiration for other paintings when I want this look for different things. So I added more light paint and it's evenly covered, and I'm just about ready to remove the masks. Very nice. When this is completely dry, I'll add a layer of gloss gel. And I've loaded my palette knife twice with gel and just put it directly on the plate. And you can move the gel around with the palette knife and then smooth it out with a silicone brush or even a credit card. Look how that pigment is leaching up into the gel. So with that in mind, you want to move it as little as possible over the whole plate so you don't pull up too much pigment. A little pigment looks cool, but a lot looks, well, like a lot. So I need more gel here, and I want it to be thick enough so that we can pull it from the plate without a lot of stretching or tearing. And I'm fussing with this way too much, but you get the general idea. You want a smooth, somewhat smooth, thick layer. When you're finished applying the gel, you want to just leave it dry for 24 to 48 hours because the underside is touching the plate. It won't dry as fast, and you want to make sure and give it enough time. On the Instagram video, I covered it with freezer paper and then pulled the paper off with the skin the next day. I didn't use freezer paper this time. I'm just going to peel it right off the plate. So check a corner and make sure it's not gummy underneath, and then separate the skin from the plate carefully and pull gently so that it doesn't stretch out of shape. I'm trying to use one hand to pull and one hand to keep the plate on the mat. There we go. So now we have a nice acrylic skin that can be adjoined as is, or it can be cut up and used in a mixed media piece or as a collage element. Does anyone remember color forms? So this will stick to a window or on a glass vase. Let's have a look at it with a white paper. And let's see how it'll look in a sketchbook. So you could adhere that with some gel or a glue stick. Or you can mount it on a cradled wood panel and pop it in a frame, a floater frame. And here are a few of my other stencil designs. Thank you so much for watching. Hope to see you again.